So I first discovered DS and Durga fragrances on a shopping excursion I had buying clothing at the J. Crew store here in San Francisco. I enjoyed the fragrances and I went through some of the fragrances that J. Crew had, and I ended up buying Italian Cypress. This was going back to around 2012. I have no longer that bottle, but also the bottles have changed since then, since the first time I bought a DS and Durga fragrance. Fast forward to around 8 years later, I fell in love with I Don't Know What in the new bottle, and I've been promoting this fragrance quite a bit. It's a minimalistic fragrance. It's also an enhancer, and if you have this, you can actually enhance it, prime it with the 3 fragrances I'm going to talk to you about today. So those are Cowboy Grass from 2008, Burning Barbershop from 2010, and then Mississippi Medicine from 2011. So these are currently selling over at Fragrance Buy, and there is a anniversary sale happening, and I'm going to tell you all about it coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Sebastian. I'm talking about DS and Durga fragrances. Do let me know when was the first time you discovered DS and Durga fragrances. So when I first discovered it at J. Crew in 2012, then I started really digging into the brand at Barney's, because the Barney's store here sold it. So I think it was a little after though. But then the brand went through a change of bottles, and I like their bottles currently. What do you guys think? And are you a fan of I Don't Know What? Again, I Don't Know What is a primer. Same thing as Leather Eyes, but Leather Eyes is very intense. It's not minimalistic whatsoever, so you can wear that on its own. But you can also use Leather Eyes with some of these fragrances, because some of these fragrances here I feel like are a bit daring. So I'll tell you all about it. But before I talk to you about the fragrances, let me tell you the details on the anniversary sale over at Fragrance Buy. So it starts from Friday, October 10th, 10 a.m., ends October 27th, 11:59 p.m. There's stackable discounts, 11% off side-wide with code FB11. Free shipping over USD 111 with code 11SHIP. Additional stackable rewards emailed to loyalty members, it says. Samples and freebies. First 250 orders over USD 400 gets one of PDM, Zerjoff, hairspray, deodorant, or candle valued at $60. Auto added to carts that qualify. First 5,000 orders gets 1 times free sample automatically added to your order. Customer of the Year giveaway. 5 golden tickets up for grabs. Win 100% off your order up to $500 during the sale. Simply place an order of 150 USD or more for your chance to win. Plus heavily reduced door crashers, and I'll have a link in the info box. And there are over 1,000 other products restocking as well. So it seems like a great deal. You know, I do buy fragrances from Fragrance Buy, but I was actually asked to do a video, and I specifically chose these fragrances because I've been wanting to talk about these fragrances, because I've gone back to these fragrances all the way back to when I was sampling the fragrances at Barney's, and Barney's is no longer around. So I'm glad I'm getting the chance to review these fragrances for you guys. But a little bit more about some of the fragrances I speak about on the channel, and I'll move on to the fragrances. Grapefruit Generation is a great grapefruit fragrance. If you haven't heard about it, check it out. It's pretty zingy. I've spoken quite a bit about pistachio as well. It's delicious with the pistachio, very nutty, a bit green, and also patchouli vanillic, creamy. And Bistro Water is also a green freshy. So these are the fragrances I've spoken quite a bit about. And again, I'm glad I'm getting to talk to you about these 3 fragrances. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about is Cowboy Grass. I'm doing it in chronological order. This one came out in 2008, according to the online databases. Cowboy Grass is a vetiver fragrance, and I feel like it's the safest between the 3 I'm talking about. And here we go again. I feel like if you have Leather Eyes, you can really enhance Cowboy Grass amazingly, because to me, it acts very fresh and also citrusy. It has bergamot in the notes. I think the bergamot is pretty prominent here. And the vetiver, even though it has grassy touches, they've also thrown in grass as a note. So it's kind of grassy, it's dry, it's aromatic, it's woody for sure, and there's spicy touches coming in. And there's a slight smokiness coming in here as well. For me, I didn't find this to be extremely daring. It reminded me a bit of other vetiver fragrances, but it was really nicely executed. I think if you are into vetiver as a note, I think this is perfect. And for me, I find vetiver to be perfect in in kind of wet, rainy, kind of damp weather. So if you have a lot of drizzly rain, like if you live in Portland where drizzles all the time, I think vetiver fragrances would be perfect. For some reason, that kind of like warmth and wetness kind of brings out the qualities of the vetiver in a fragrance. But it smells great. It's a really nice take on a vetiver fragrance. But I've smelled fragrances like this, and that's why I thought layering these two together, leather eyes with cowboy grass, you'll bring out some leathery accents of the vetiver, and also the fact that it has some slight smokiness, and this leather eyes is a bit smoky, and so it would really do some interesting, unique things to the fragrance. But on its own, I find it to be really pleasant wear, definitely leaning masculine. All three of the fragrances I'm talking about today are very masculine leaning, especially the first two. And of course, if you like it even more masculine and add a bunch more smokiness, animalic touches, of course, the leather eyes is animalic. And of course, the leather, definitely try those two. But let's quickly smell cowboy grass. And let me know if you're familiar with cowboy grass. Are you a fan of vetiver and fragrances? Do put a comment down below. Yeah, it smells fantastic, actually. And I like that whole juicy, citrusy touch that's really nicely meshed with the grassy vetiver. There's a bit of a damp quality about it also. Like you can experience a very rooty quality because it's a grass, it's rooted grass. So that's kind of the idea of vetiver, but really fantastically done fragrance. I've mentioned that I'm a bit bored of vetiver, and including oud as well. But honestly, this smells really, really great. But for me, I would prefer to wear a few of the other fragrances I'm going to talk to you about, and also would totally do some layering things with the primers. If I did it with the I don't know what, I think it won't change the smell as much. So you might have a bit more molecular notes connecting with the vetiver of the cowboy grass. But for me, I feel like the leather eyes would be something completely original, so daring kind of, if that makes sense. All right, the next fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is Burning Barbershop. So this is a fragrance I've known about. I've known about these three fragrances quite a bit. I've actually gone back to these fragrances quite often whenever I see the brand. I've just never picked up the fragrances myself, but I've always felt like they were quality. But between the three fragrances, I feel like Burning Barbershop is the most daring because you're familiar with Fougeres. I just aired a video on amber Fougeres. I wouldn't add this in that list, perhaps maybe a little bit. This is quite smoky, and it does have a very burned kind of charred smell. And basically the fragrance starts off quite barbershop-y, but you can experience the smoke creeping in, and it's almost like a little, fire starts and then it burns the whole experience. So smoke creeps in, the barbershop-y aromatic spicy touches kind of disappears a little bit, but then you're left with more of a smoke char experience with some sweetness thrown in as well. But the notes in this, lavender, spearmint, hay, vanilla, lime, hemlock, spruce, Turkish rose, tuberose, and burnt oil. You have a oily quality here for sure. You really experience it. It's almost like grease with smoke. It's almost like you've spilled oil on top of burned items, kind of, with the background of the aromatics. The lavender is prominent here, but I feel like the spearmint for me is a bit more prominent. So it's a barbershop fragrance. You'll recognize that, but you really, really might get challenged with that whole smoky quality of it. But I found that this fragrance between the three is the most unique out of the three, and I enjoyed, wearing it and testing it out. So let's quickly spray this and let me tell you a little bit about it, a little bit more about it. It's the other thing is they're using, it's almost like burned rubber. So there's a bit of leather quality here. And I feel like Burning Barbershop has a little bit of the smell of the burning smokiness of leather eyes. So you might actually layer those two together. It might end up being kind of a explosive nuclear quality because you can enhance it with that. I feel like I don't know what might be better suited for a less strong fragrance. And between the three fragrances I'm talking about, I feel like Burning Barbershop is the strongest because of that smoky quality. So for me, once again, Leather Eyes would be the right one to, prime Burning Barbershop with. Just keep in mind. Leatherize is quite strong, so you don't want to overwhelm the fragrance with too much leatherize. Otherwise, it would clash or take over. So in the end, if you want some enhancements of either of the two fragrances I spoke about, just add a little bit and test to see. But this is quite smoky for sure. It smells burned, but in the background, you're smelling the aromatics. You'll definitely pick up the spearmint. I do. In fact, as I was saying, I pick up more spearmint than lavender. And then you've got, the vanilla sweetening things up. You've got aromatics of the trees that are in here. The tuberose and the rose in here, even though they have, they appear, they almost are nondescript. It's almost like they're to enhance but not really stand out. So it's blended in a way that you kind of notice something floral is happening in here. But it's not overwhelming because it's about the aromatics and the smokiness and things like that. Really wonderful offering. I really like that one. It's the most unique out of the three I'm talking about today. And let's move on to the third fragrance. And last but not least, we're talking about Mississippi Medicine. So Mississippi Medicine, I didn't really know what it was about until I smelled it quite a long time ago. And it's basically an incense fragrance, but you've got smoky touches in here as well. And once again, I feel like Leatherize would be a great fragrance. Now, this is only to enhance the fragrance and if you want to change it. On their own, they're finished products, finished fragrances. And since I've been excited about, layering and enhancing and priming fragrances, I kind of do that with fragrances. But this one, I like the name. I like the name of all three of these fragrances, by the way. I feel like DURGA comes up with some very unique names for fragrances, except for Italian Cypress. I felt that was a bit boring. But I feel like these names are really top-notch, really unique names, and definitely you want to kind of dig in and discover the fragrances to figure out what they're about, because Mississippi Medicine doesn't really tell you what it's all about. But for me, it's a smoky incense fragrance. But this features notes of birch tar, incense, cypress root, black pine, cade, frankincense, red cedar, aldehydes, cascarilla bark. This is also a bit like A City on Fire from the House of Imaginary Authors, but I feel like you can also say Burning Barbershop is a bit like A City on Fire as well. So they kind of have somewhat similarities, but completely different, because this one, you don't notice the really burned charred smell, but it has cade here, just like cade was in or is in Imaginary Authors, A City on Fire. But the frankincense is really strong here, and the incense. So eventually it leads to become something very churchy for me. So it does have a bit of a churchy quality, and I think it's nicely done. But for me, the standout is Burning Barbershop, because barbershop fragrances were some of my favorite fragrances. I've always mentioned it's the kind of fragrances my dad wore, and it's the kind of fragrances that really led me to really enjoy fragrances. I love barbershop fragrances, Fougeres. But this, to me, if you're familiar with fragrances like Avignon by Comme des Garçons, some of the very popular incense fragrances, you're going to really enjoy this one, even though there's a light fizziness happening here with the aldehydes. So smoky incense fragrances do get quite dark and boring somewhat. I do like a little warmth in incensey fragrances, such as, something like Baby Cat or Vanagloria, because it has vanilla. I think this is nicely done, and there's enough sweetness under there to enjoy the fragrance. But for an incense fragrance, I feel like, for me, if you mesh it with something sweet vanillic, it actually makes the fragrance a bit more exciting. But between the three fragrances, I feel like Burning Barbershop is the most unique, most interesting to wear. The easiest would be Cowboy Grass, but you've got to be into Vetiver. And some of you might not be into Vetiver. I know there's a lot of fans of Vetiver, but I always get comments saying, I don't care for this note. And again, Mississippi Medicine, I think it's the number 2. So it's incense, and sometimes people don't want to wear fragrances that smell like church. But those are my thoughts on these 3 fragrances from DURGA. What are your thoughts on these fragrances? Do you own them? Have you thought about buying them? And after watching this video, what do you think? Will you rush out to get them? Because they are having a sale over at Fragrance Buy, and I have all the links in the info box. You can buy these or any other DURGA fragrances, or anything else that's having a discount on their website currently. But do let me know your thoughts on these fragrances. First, let me know if you're a fan of the brand. What's your all-time favorite fragrance from this house? And also let me know if you know Cowboy Grass, Burning Barbershop, or Mississippi Medicine. Put a comment down below. And let me know also if you want me to do more videos on this house. I'm quite curious. I've been a fan, but I've been getting more and more into it in the latter part. I think when I really got into the brand is when I first discovered I Don't Know What. And if you don't know the story, I discovered it here at Barney's. I smelled it. I thought, you know what, this is kind of boring. Let's move on. But I circled back to it when I was on a trip to LA. At Lucky Scent, I sampled it. And it's always hot there. I wore it and went out. And I felt like the fragrance was just, you know, projecting off of me so sexily. So it was an instant buy at that time. And I've been a fan of the brand since then. But yeah, let me know what your favorite fragrances are from this house. And put a comment down below. And don't forget to go check out the sale over at Fragrance Buy. But if you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.